On a calm summer morning in 1991, a small team of naval archaeologists lowered a remotely operated submersible into the cold, ink-black waters off the coast of Jutland. The world above was bright and peaceful, gulls circling, gentle waves brushing the hull. But as the camera descended, the light vanished. Colors faded into gray, then into total darkness. At 45 meters, the first shapes began to emerge. A pair of giant steel gun barrels, a collapsed conning tower, a ragged hole torn through armor. Then, resting on her side like a fallen titan, the unmistakable shadow of HMS Invincible, the first British battlecruiser ever built and the first one ever lost to a magazine explosion. The cameras drifted through the wreckage, revealing twisted decks, ruptured plates, and a gash so massive it seemed unreal. This was not the clean story of a noble ship sunk in elegant combat. It was violence frozen in time, evidence of an explosion so sudden, so total, that the ship split in two and plunged to the bottom in 90 seconds. As the submersible hovered over the ruins, one of the researchers whispered through the radio link, "This is the moment the battle stopped being theory and became truth." For decades, historians had debated why British battlecruisers exploded so catastrophically at Jutland. Now, at last, the sea was ready to answer. Before the late 20th century, Jutland's wrecks were inaccessible mysteries. But advances in underwater robotics changed everything. ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, sonar imaging, deep-sea photography, laser measurement tools. These technologies transformed the North Sea's floor into a searchable archive, one containing the preserved truth of the battle's most controversial failures. Between 1991 and 2016, multiple expeditions mapped the wrecks of HMS Invincible, HMS Defense, HMS Queen Mary, HMS Indefatigable, HMS Black Prince, SMS Lutzow, scuttled en route home, SMS Wiesbaden, SMS Pommern. What they found confirmed, contradicted, and complicated decades of official explanations. HMS Invincible. When divers reached the wreck, they were stunned. The center of the ship, the area containing Q turret and the magazines, was completely vaporized. It wasn't a breach. It wasn't structural failure. It was annihilation. The explosion had split Invincible cleanly in two, the halves lying 50 meters apart. The blast was so intense, it had peeled thick steel plates back like paper. The wreck proved what survivors had always insisted. The ship didn't sink. It detonated. ***. Later analysis showed signs of unprotected cordite charges stored outside magazines, blown flash doors, flame paths that ran directly to the magazines, structural weaknesses in the turret floor. The Royal Navy had blamed German gunnery for decades. The wreck told a more painful truth. British ammunition practices killed the ship, not German shells alone. HMS Queen Mary. Queen Mary's wreck lies in three major sections. The ROV footage showed her forward turrets blown open, evidence of a flash fire running down ammunition hoists, magazine areas reduced to tangled metal, a pattern of destruction almost identical to Invincible. Flash protection systems had catastrophically failed. The wreck validated the concerns of pre-war gunnery experts who had warned the Admiralty repeatedly about unsafe cordite handling. One naval historian remarked, "It was not German shells that doomed these ships. It was British culture, a culture of faster firing, cutting corners, ignoring safety protocols, prioritizing rate of fire over protection." The sea, after 80 years, had finally confirmed it. Expeditions to German wrecks found 1. Superior internal subdivision. Compartments remained intact even when hull plates had buckled. 2. Excellent magazine protection. No German capital ship suffered a magazine explosion at Jutland. 3. Clever internal design choices. Damage control features were ahead of their time, including effective flash-proofing, better turret sealing, efficient water pumps, armored conning towers. On SMS Seydlitz, divers discovered evidence of flooded magazines, deliberately flooded by crew to prevent catastrophic detonation. These actions saved the ship. Even in death, German ships told a story of discipline and design superiority. One of the greatest controversies of Jutland was British shell performance. Royal Navy shells, APC, armor-piercing capped. Many British shells broke up or shattered on impact rather than penetrating and detonating inside German hulls. Diverse surveys revealed many German ships showed minimal internal blast damage. Instead of penetrating, shells gouged and ricocheted, exploding too early or not at all. This confirmed what the Navy had long denied. British shells were poorly designed for long-range combat. In contrast, German shells penetrated deeply, detonated inside ships, caused severe internal damage, were more reliable at steep impact angles. This uneven performance was directly visible in the wrecks. For decades, the disappearance of the armored cruiser HMS Black Prince remained mysterious. No survivors, no witnesses. The wreck revealed the truth. Black Prince had stumbled by total accident directly in front of the German battle line during night action. She was lit up at point-blank range by multiple German warships, including battleships firing their full-caliber guns. The wreck shows massive penetration holes from 12-inch shells, entire sections of hull obliterated, total structural collapse inward, evidence of fires that consumed the ship before she sank. She likely sank in under 5 minutes. No human could have survived such devastation. For the first time, families of the lost had answers. The wreck of the light cruiser HMS Wiesbaden lies upright, remarkably intact. Her engine room was destroyed early in the battle, immobilizing her. For hours, she drifted helplessly in the middle of the conflict. ROV footage showed guns frozen at final firing angles, shell casings scattered across decks, evidence of last-ditch damage control, compartments sealed from the inside. Wiesbaden's crew made a final stand in the darkness, firing until ammunition ran out. British sailors had reported hearing cries from the darkness, not knowing which side they belonged to. The wreck confirmed those voices were likely Wiesbaden's doomed crew. None survived. For decades after Jutland, the Admiralty maintained several claims. British ship design was sound. Ammunition handling was not the problem. German skill was overstated. British shells were adequate. Battlecruiser losses were unavoidable. Jellico's caution was excessive. The wrecks shattered these claims. They showed 1. The Admiralty underestimated German engineering. Germany's magazines were safer. Germany's compartments were superior. Germany's flash protection was more reliable. 2. British battlecruisers were dangerously vulnerable. Thin armor, unsafe ammunition handling, exposed magazines, open flash paths. 3. Shell failures cost Britain tactical success. Dozens of hits that should have sunk German capital ships failed to penetrate properly. 4. Jellico's caution was justified. Had he closed aggressively, British ships would have exposed their weak turret armor and volatile propellant to German shells at close range. Modern analysis agrees. If Jellico had fought more aggressively, Britain might have lost the war. Every wreck contains more than steel. It contains the final moments of hundreds of sailors. Turret crews blown apart in instant flashes. Stokers trapped behind jammed bulkheads. Officers trying to maintain command amid fires. Engineers working pumps until the last second. Medical staff treating burns with seawater. Personal items recovered over the years include boots, mugs, torn uniforms, a rusted pocket watch frozen at the moment of impact, a bent brass telescope, shrapnel embedded in a steel deck plate. Each object is a fragment of a life interrupted. These are not relics. They are evidence. Evidence of courage. Evidence of error. Evidence of tragedy. As interest in deep-sea salvage grew in the 2000s, concerns emerged. Some Jutland wrecks, especially Invincible and Defense, were illegally targeted by scrap metal salvagers. Wartime steel is incredibly valuable because it lacks radiation contamination from post-1945 nuclear testing. Entire sections were ripped from a seabed. Graves were disturbed. National outrage followed. This led to efforts to legally protect the wrecks, designate them as war graves, monitor them with sonar surveys, impose legal penalties on looters. For Britain and Germany alike, these ships are sacred. They're not ruins. They're cemeteries. For decades, Jutland was debated, misinterpreted, minimized, or twisted by politics. But the wrecks do not lie. They show the truth of design flaws, tactical missteps, human courage, leadership dilemmas, technological limitations, where memoirs contradict, where politicians distort, where myths take root. The steel remains honest. In a sense, the wrecks completed the battle story. They ended the debate that began on June 1st, 1916. A naval archaeologist put it best: the ships are the witnesses. We only needed to listen. The Battle of Jutland did not die in 1916. It sank, and in its depths lay answers no historian could provide. Why British ships exploded, how German engineering saved lives, what courage looks like below deck, how chaos shapes war, how myths unravel under scrutiny, how the truth survives beneath the waves. Jutland steel ghosts have become teachers. They remind us that war is not clean, not simple, not easily judged. The men who fought at Jutland are long gone, but their ships endure as monuments to their final moments. Moments of terror, bravery, loyalty, sacrifice. And when we look at those wrecks, we are forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. The ocean keeps the truth long after nations forget it. The day the world held its breath. On the night of May 31st, 1916, as the battered German high seas fleet slipped back toward the safety of Jade Bay, a strange tension gripped both sides of the North Sea. Neither navy slept, neither government celebrated, neither nation could fully accept what had happened. Because everyone, British, German, neutral observers, felt the same thing. Jutland could have gone differently, terrifyingly differently. There are battles in history where outcomes hinge on grand strategies, sweeping maneuvers, or brilliant commanders. Jutland was not one of them. Jutland was a battle of moments. Moments where a single decision, a shift of fog, a misread signal, or a few seconds hesitation could have altered the course of world history. In Part 8, we explore the what-ifs of Jutland, not as fantasy, not as fiction, but as historically grounded alternative outcomes supported by contemporary records, naval analyses, and testimonies of the men who were there. These are not imagined histories. These are the missed realities of a battle balanced on a razor's edge. What if number 1, Jellico had turned the other way? One of the most debated decisions in naval history occurred at 6:15 p.m. when Admiral Jellico deployed the Grand Fleet into battle line. He had two choices: turn to port, left; turn to starboard, right. He chose starboard, crossing the German team. Naval historian Nicholas Jellico, his grandson, later wrote, had he chosen wrong, the British fleet could have collided with itself in the fog, lost formation, or exposed its vulnerable bows to German fire. If Jellico had turned the other way, British formation might have broken apart. German battleships would have had broadside advantage. Beatty's battered battlecruisers could have been surrounded. Scheer might have inflicted catastrophic losses. In this scenario, supported by analysis from the Naval War College, the Royal Navy could have lost 8 to 10 dreadnoughts in the opening exchange. Britain would still have naval superiority in the long run, but the psychological blow, political shock, and immediate German triumph could have changed public opinion and perhaps even extended the war. The margin for disaster was terrifyingly small. What if number 2, the German fleet had appeared 2 minutes earlier? When Beatty saw Scheer's battleships emerge from the mist, he turned north, just in time to avoid being caught at close range. Had Scheer appeared 2 minutes earlier, Beatty's battlecruisers would have been trapped between Hipper's battlecruisers to the south, Scheer's battleships to the east, and the setting sun in their eyes. British naval analyst Arthur Martyr called this scenario the perfect German trap. In this case, Lion, Tiger, and Princess Royal would likely have been destroyed. Beatty could have been killed, the British scouting force wiped out, This would have meant Jellico entering battle blind, without accurate reports. British torpedo attacks misdirected. German destroyers able to launch close-range salvos. It is not far-fetched, it was minutes from happening. The course of the entire battle could have changed. What if number 3, the weather had been clear? Jutland's haze affected everything. Gunnery, visibility, signaling, range finding, identification of friend and foe. Time and again, German ships vanished into fog, just as British fire corrected its aim. British ships appeared suddenly in German sights and then blended with smoke. Clear weather would have changed the battle dramatically. Clear skies mean British optical rangefinders, superior at long distance, would shine. The Grand Fleet could have forced decisive battle. German withdrawal would be impossible. British destroyers could launch torpedoes at visible targets. German battlecruisers, heavily damaged, would be finished off. Naval simulations suggest that in clear conditions, Britain might have sunk 70 to 80% of a German fleet. Instead, Germany slipped behind curtains of fog. Fate, not strategy, saved the high seas fleet. What if number 4, a single torpedo had hit Iron Duke? German destroyers launched dozens of torpedoes late in the battle. Many passed dangerously close to HMS Iron Duke, Jellico's flagship. If just one had struck, Jellico could have been killed. Fleet command thrown into chaos. Signals disrupted. Maneuvers halted or contradictory. The line of battle might have collapsed. Vice Admiral Thomas Jerome or Admiral Sir Cecil Burney would have taken command, but with incomplete information, destroyed communications, and no time to coordinate. Consequences could include British dreadnoughts becoming disorganized, Scheer exploiting the confusion, German torpedo attacks penetrating deeper, a pathway opening for German escape or counterattack. The entire British fleet's fate hung on inches of steel and seconds of timing. What if number 5, Beatty hadn't lost his signals? Beatty's signaling failures were among the most damaging mishaps of the battle. His orders were delayed, misinterpreted, obscured by smoke, not relayed to all ships. As a result, his battlecruisers fought without coordinated fire. His supporting battleships were out of position. 2 battlecruisers exploded with no mutual support. The British scouting line fragmented. Had signals worked properly, Queen Mary and Indefatigable might not have been isolated. Hipper's battlecruisers may have been pinned between crossfire. British destroyer attacks would have been synchronized. Jellico would have received clearer reports. One naval historian noted, if Beatty's signals had been seen, Jutland's opening hours would be unrecognizable. Many of Britain's early losses could have been avoided. What if number 6, German shells were less effective? German armor-piercing shells contained a delayed action fuse designed to detonate inside British ships, not on impact. This is why Queen Mary, Indefatigable, Invincible were hit in the same way. Penetration, flash, fire, magazine explosion. British naval architects assumed German shells were inferior. They were wrong. If German shells had been less advanced, British battlecruisers might have survived initial hits. Flash fires might have been contained. Magazine explosions prevented. British losses drastically reduced. Conversely, if British shells had been as well designed as German ones, Germany might have lost Derflinger, Seydlitz, König, Grosser Kurfürst. These ships survived hits that should have destroyed them. Jutland's outcome was shaped as much by metallurgy as by tactics. What if number 7, the Grand Fleet collided in the fog? Few viewers realize how close the British dreadnought line came to catastrophe during deployment. At least 3 near collisions occurred. If even one had gone wrong, HMS Ajax might have rammed HMS Orion. HMS Colossus nearly struck HMS Marlborough. One confused turn could have cascaded across the entire line. A collision chain would have broken formation, slowed the line, blocked firing arcs, forced Jellico to abort deployment, opened the door for Scheer to concentrate fire. A historian commented, "The only thing more dangerous than German shells was British tonnage." The Royal Navy nearly lost ships before firing a shot. What if number 8, Scheer had not turned away? The battle turn away is one of the most remarkable maneuvers in naval history. Scheer ordered his entire fleet to reverse course instantly, a move so dangerous that even his officers hesitated. But what if he had not? What if he had pressed the attack? German historian Michael Epkenhand's estimates: Derflinger, Seydlitz, and Lutzow would have been lost. Up to 6 German battleships annihilated. German destroyer flotillas obliterated. The fleet rendered combat ineffective in under 20 minutes. Alternatively, had Scheer charged straight at Jellico, torpedoes and close-range fire might have inflicted devastating casualties on the British line. This was the razor's edge Scheer stood on. One wrong decision, and the high seas fleet ceases to exist. What if number 9, the night fight had gone differently? Nightfall was a moment of terror for both sides. If one British destroyer had sighted the German fleet at the right moment, the entire Grand Fleet could have opened fire at point-blank range. If one German torpedo boat had mistaken the British line for friendly ships, a single flare could have revealed Scheer's position. If visibility had been slightly better, German battleships would have been illuminated against the horizon. If it had been worse, British destroyers could have run straight into German guns. Multiple German ships passed within a few hundred meters of British dreadnoughts without being seen. If they had been spotted, history would remember Jutland as the greatest naval massacre of all time. Instead, the sea wrapped both fleets in darkness. Chance, more than strategy, decided the night. What if number 10, Germany had fought a second Jutland? After the battle, the Kaiser asked Scheer to plan another breakthrough. Scheer refused. He wrote bluntly, "The fleet cannot sustain another Jutland." But what if Germany had risked another fleet action? British analysts concluded the high seas fleet would have been destroyed. The blockade would tighten. Naval mutiny, which occurred in 1918, would erupt earlier. Germany's morale would have collapsed. Jutland showed German sailors they could fight, but also showed them they could die in droves. A second Jutland would break them. This what if is less speculation and more certainty. The fragility of history. How close the world came to a different future. If Jellico turned wrong, Britain loses its fleet. If Beatty's ships explode, earlier scouting collapses. If Scheer doesn't turn German fleet destroyed. If fog lifts, Britain crushes Germany decisively. If one torpedo hits Jellico dies, chaos erupts. If ammunition was safer, British losses shrink dramatically. History often hinges on clear causes and deliberate decisions. Jutland did not. It hinged on weather, metallurgy, visibility, minute-by-minute timing, communication failures, mechanical quirks, human reaction under stress. This is why Jutland is endlessly studied, because it shows that the fate of nations can turn not on grand strategy, but on the color of the sky, the thickness of a door, or the angle of a steel plate. In the end, Jutland was a battle defined not just by what happened, but by what almost happened. These alternative possibilities are not fantasies. They are grounded in evidence, logbooks, wreck analyses, and naval simulations. They remind us that history is fragile, that even the mightiest navies are vulnerable, that the difference between triumph and tragedy can be measured in seconds. Jutland is remembered as a confusing, indecisive clash. But beneath the confusion lies a deeper truth. The world came far closer to a different outcome than anyone realized. That is the final lesson of Jutland. Not certainty, not triumph, not defeat, but the precarious nature of fate.